Okay. All right. So we are going to talk about, again, what constitutes a digital marketing plan. Now, there's a couple caveats here, because if you create a plan, it's going to probably look different from company to company, right? If you work for Twitch and you work for Facebook and you're writing a digital marketing plan, they're probably going to consist of different elements, right? Because every company, every CMO has a different perspective on how to create a plan. Same thing with agencies, right? You go from agency to agency, you're going to put, your plan is going to be different than others, but there's some core elements that need to be considered in any plan. We're going to talk through that. Okay. So I don't expect you to know what all this means, right? I'm going to try to describe these different elements, and then I want you to ask questions along the way. So I'm hoping that you read the homework assignment so you can start to formulate some thoughts and a point of view, and then ask the questions as we go through. I just have a couple of slides that I want to present to you guys. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Am I sharing? There we go. Am I sharing?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. If you could do me a favor, I think if you could just go on mute, if whoever's not on mute, if you can go on mute, please, because I'm hearing some a bunch of feedback. Cool. Thank you. All right. So what is a digital marketing plan? So I'm going to talk this is essentially it, right? But there's actually a lot more, but this is the core foundation of a digital strategy. Okay. So how many of you, before I actually jump into this, how many of you can tell me what the difference is between a strategy and a tactic? Anybody just chime in? Who wants to take
strategy is more long-term vision. The tactical is kind of like your day-to-day.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. I phrased it a little bit differently. I say the strategy is what you're going to do, and the tactics are how you're going to do it. So here's an example I have on the next slide here. Let me just. There we go. Okay. So I want to put this here. I put this here purposely because I get, I see slides all the time working in an agency, and I do get slides from folks who are, fairly new in their careers and journey. And a lot of times they use goal, strategy, and tactic synonymously. Okay. So, and they're not the same. Now there's different types of goals as well, like SMART goals. I'm sure you guys have taken a class on that. The Six Sigma obviously is probably SMART goals are there, but here's an example, right? So again, not the greatest one considering kind of where we are in the world, but it's the best one I could think of when I built this slide like 3 years ago. The goal is to win the war against another country, right? That is your goal. Your strategy is to undermine their ability to wage war preemptively, annihilating their military forces. And the tactics are how you're going to do that, right? Missile attacks, weapon stockpile, you may take out their comms. So this is a good model. Another way to do this, which I think is a better example, is, you work for HP or you work for Apple, right? You're making laptops, you're selling maybe mobile phones or mobile devices, and your goal is to become a category leader in sales by a particular year, right? Your strategy is going to be to persuade others that your laptops are the best on the market by kind of associating the narrative of affordability and quality, right? Now, sometimes that's hard to do because people tend to think of lower cost as lower quality, right? So again, I wasn't really thinking when I wrote this, but now that I'm a tad bit older and reading this for the first time in 6 months, it probably isn't the greatest example, but it's an example of what a particular strategy might be. Objective is kind of another, I like to say goals and objectives are synonymous. Objectives could be a little bit more specific. In this case, 70% more market share than your competitors. And then your tactics are, creative campaign, right? A narrative that's focused on affordability and quality, and launching several campaigns across digital audiences. Okay. So I thought it's important to just delineate what strategy versus tactics versus objectives are, because, I think that's very much a missed opportunity in most education as it relates to thinking about business in general, right? Because you learn a lot about PR writing, and, a lot of the business acumen comes from experience. And so to get ahead of that, I like to talk about things like this because it just helps you be more of a critical thinker as you enter into an agency, or you enter, you go to a large brand or even a startup. You can begin to think about the business implications of a program or a campaign. Okay. So your strategy is always going to be included. Now, the second piece of it is a competitive analysis. How many of you know what a SWOT analysis is? Just a show of hands. Right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I hate filling these out, by the way, but it's important because it gives a snapshot into the marketplace. And the reality is this is going to change depending upon who you write this strategy for. Is it for a client? Is it for your boss? Is it for your agency? Or is it for you as a small business owner, right? You have to contextualize it in different ways. I'm contextualizing it through the lens of working at an agency and providing a digital strategy for a client. Okay. So I always look at it through the lens of, okay, what are the strengths of my client's brand in the marketplace? What are their weaknesses? What are some opportunities based on the conversations we've had with the clients? What are some threats? And that could be based on some data that we pulled, of up and coming competitors, or, competitors who are innovating their products and things like that. So that competitive analysis, SWOT analysis, is going to look different. It could be just an audit of, if it's a social media strategy versus a broader digital strategy. Your social media analysis, competitive analysis, might just include, how many different channels are your competitors using? Do they have multiple Facebook pages? Do they have one Facebook page? How often are they posting? Are they driving a lot of engagement? Are they getting a lot of retweets and likes and comments and shares? So that's more of an audit, more so than an analysis, but it's a good starting point. The third piece, and this is what we're going to drill on, and this is what I want to drill on you. And I hopefully I've been pointing to this, but we're going to get very specific. This is the narrative, right? This is what I would call, I like to equate it to poetry, because it should be, whenever I write a narrative, or I don't write narratives, that's usually a creative person, right? It's like a creative director, or, some type of copywriter or writer. And they write it in a way that when you read it out loud, it just flows. It sounds good. It doesn't have to rhyme like a poem, but it sounds like poetry. Now, I'm going to talk to you about an example we did when we pitched, in a couple of weeks, we pitched Jenny Craig. Anybody know Jenny Craig, the weight loss system? We pitched them, and we read the narrative orally in a room with the CEO and like 10 of his people. He was the only male on that. The CEO was like the only male on the Jenny Craig side. The rest were, women who worked in different departments, marketing and PR, et cetera. And we read this narrative. And I remember when I read it, I was looking around the room, and there was one woman in the corner who, like, it brought tears to her eyes, because, and that was kind of on purpose. We wanted to write. Have you ever watched 15-second scene in a movie and you're like, whoa, it's just kind of like, it's heavy, right? It hits you. Or you read, a poem, or even a lyric to a song, like a rap lyric, if you will. It digs deep. It's poetry. It tells a story. So that is key for any type of marketing plan, because what that does is if you write a really good narrative, and let's say, for example, you work for Twitch, okay, and you write a narrative for a campaign that you're launching. Now, narratives can be written from the brand perspective, like, what is our overall brand? And this is not the same thing as going to, a company website, clicking on, about us and reading that, right? That is, founded in this, it has nothing to do with that. It's what you stand for and why it matters. Okay. And so, and it could be what you're interested in if you're a student, right? Writing your own narrative. But it's a way for you, again, back to the example, I work at Twitch, I write a narrative for a campaign. And I bring onboarding new agencies. So let's say I have an agency, a new creative agency, and I say, hey guys, here's our narrative, right? It's already done. The CMO signed off on it. And here are some, if you look at the next bullet point, key message points, right? And key message points basically reinforce the narrative, right? They're talking points. They're unique differentiators, or it's your unique value proposition, right? What makes you different from, your competitors? Or what problems are you solving in the world for customers? And so when you onboard a new agency, as an example, you would give them the narrative, you would give them the key messages, and then they would go and, again, if it's a creative agency, they're going to create mock-ups or video clips or, posters, whatever you're hiring them to create. And it's all going to be based on the narrative. And I like to call it the North Star, right? So anything that you do from a outbound marketing standpoint, whether it's content marketing, SEO, PR, digital marketing, search, display advertising, does it all point to your narrative? Like that is your North Star. Everything has to tell a complete story, right? And it has to be repetitive. And, and I'm going to talk about why in just a second, but these two, bullet point number 3 and 4 are probably the most important of this class, to be honest, because you can learn all about the channels, right? You can learn about how to create a paid media plan. You can learn how to, create a Facebook page and start building a community there. You can learn, how to write KPIs and goals, but your narrative and your key messages. This is, again, you walk into an interview, whether it's for a new job as a full-time employee or an internship, you start talking about narratives, or sometimes they're referred to as manifestos, right? Where like, what is our internal manifesto for this campaign? Or what is our quote unquote rallying cry? Like, how do we get people after they read this to like get motivated? And, if you've ever watched Braveheart and, with Mel Gibson, right, there's a scene in there, and I'm not like this warmonger or anything like that. I love old movies like that, but they're about to go into battle and they know that they're going to lose. Well, they're not going to lose, but they know that they're outnumbered. They don't have the same, but he gives this speech, right? And that was his narrative to get everybody behind him to go into battle. Okay. So think of it like that, right? Now, obviously it's less dramatic than that, right? For marketing, it's like, okay, I mean, if you think about Nike, right? What is Nike's, anybody just spit this out. What is Nike's tagline?
Just do it.
What does that mean to you?
Just go for it, for what you want.
What else? Anybody else? Anybody else have a comment on what just do it means to them? What'd you say, Phil? Conquer?
Conquer, yeah.
Conquer. I love that word. Anything else? Anybody else?
To Nike, it probably just means just buy their product.
Yes.
Like that.
Well, not really. I don't think it was designed to do that. But I like your thinking there. A couple years back, I want to say 2003, maybe even before that, Nike was experimenting with launching a new tagline. And I don't remember exactly how they did this, but I saw the video, and the video, it was an ad basically. And it showed, imagine like a dirt road, right? Or not even a dirt road, like a freeway, but no cars were on it. It's like a one-way street, right? And in the distance, you saw like a little speck, like coming towards you. And after like 10, 15 seconds, you saw that speck getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And what it was a young boy who was running. He was running, and there was sweat like just all over his shirt. And he was like an overweight kid running, and he just runs right past the camera. And then the 2 words popped up. That was supposed to be, I don't know if it was a campaign, or I don't think it was going to replace Just Do It, but it was definitely related, because the 2 words were, I can. I can. So think about both of those, Just Do It and I can. They kind of mean the same. Do you guys agree? Right? It's motivating athletes or people who aren't necessarily even in sports, but who are athletic, or who, to just whatever is in front of them, conquer it. I love that word, conquer, Phil. And that's what a narrative is. Now, I would bet years ago when Just Do It first came out, whatever creative agency did that, they wrote a narrative, and from that stemmed Just Do It. I guarantee you it worked out that way. Okay. So we're going to spend a lot of time on this, right? Writing, and it's not writing like a PR press release or, AP. What is it? What is that book for PR people? Is it the AP style guide, whatever? That has nothing to do with this, right? That is just making sure you have one space after a period, then two. I still use two. Okay. I don't know why. That's the way I was taught. I cannot break that habit. Anyway, I'll digress. So moving on to what a digital strategy consists of. Okay. So I'm going to show you examples of these in a future class. The audience definition. Does anybody know what a persona is?
Kind of like what people see you as, maybe?
I like that. Keep going. Who is that?
It's me, John.
John. Okay. I don't see, because I'm sharing my screen, I don't see everybody.
Oh.
So I like that. Anybody else have any like think about what it is. Like what is
a persona is a character that you see your consumer as.
Gia, exactly. Exactly. So you can literally Google persona and they have hundreds of templates, right? And it's basically meet Jane. Jane is 35 years old. She is a mother of two. She lives in the suburbs. She shops at Safeway. She drives a minivan. She has two kids. She buys Pampers. She is an environmentalist. She's also a vegetarian. So, and the problem with personas is this, and audience definition and persona are synonymous. I just put audience definition here. Most personas are built based on assumption. In fact, 90% of personas in somebody's PowerPoint presentation in corporate America, it is because they thought of who they want to reach based on their target consumer is, and they start writing these words. Now, go ahead. What was that?
Can you run focus groups and then make a persona, or?
You can. So a focus group is basically where you bring in consumers and they have a discussion and you kind of watch them, and take notes, right? Or sometimes it's a little bit more structured where somebody's asking questions. The good ones are, the best way to build a persona is you pull data. Let me give you an example. If you go to the zoo and you watch a tiger, are you going, and let me rephrase that. Thinking about personas, right? And focus groups, as you just mentioned. A focus group is like going to the zoo and watching a tiger. And a tiger is going to act the way it acts in a zoo, right? How many of you think that a tiger is going to act differently in the wild? Anybody? Okay. Now, my point is that primary research, focus groups there's a place for them. Primary research is a survey, basically. You've probably taken one. I personally, and this is what my agency does, is we use social data to build personas. And essentially it's looking at real people, looking at who they follow, what they share, what they say, what channels they use, what media publications they're reading, and build a persona that way. Because, and it's easier to do with some audiences than others. Like Gen Z, it's hard to do a persona because the platforms that Gen Z uses, like TikTok and Instagram, et cetera, and Snapchat, it's hard to pull data from those platforms. The older you get, like me and my age, we still use Twitter, we use LinkedIn, and you can pull data from those platforms to look at job titles. What are engineers? What are engineers? What do they read? Do they read the Wall Street Journal? Do they read New York Times? What about IT? What about the CIO or the CMO or the VP of marketing, right? All those job titles exist in LinkedIn, and believe it or not, on Twitter as well. So literally try it. Go to a Twitter search, type in, VP of engineering or CMO or VP of marketing, and then click people, and you're going to see hundreds of people who have self-identified as being VPs of marketing. So if you have software that you're selling, it could be marketing technology, and you're selling it to CMOs, you can begin to study audiences in their natural habitat, like you would a tiger in the wild, versus bringing people. Because when you get asked a survey, they're very direct questions, and you can get any result you want by the question you ask. And just like reality TV, right? Nobody acts the way they really act on reality TV, unless it's like Cheaters, right? Where you don't know you're being ambushed, and all of a sudden you're on camera, right? And it's the same thing with focus groups. People go in knowing they're going to be on camera. So they go in with bias and perceptions, and they act the way they think that they should act, not naturally. Okay. So we're going to talk about that, but that's just my quick opinion on personas. The next thing is channels approach. So how many social media channels are out there? Anybody? Anybody know? Take a guess.
40.
Honestly, I don't even know. But your guess is best as mine. There's a lot though, right? But there's some core channels out there, right? We can all agree that obviously for business, there's LinkedIn. For personal, older Gen X and older, some Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, and the upper end are using Facebook, right? You have Twitter, which is probably about the same demographic. Then you have platforms like TikTok, and Instagram stories, and now you have Instagram Reels. You have other WhatsApp. Anybody use WhatsApp for like messaging? Yeah. So these are all channels that are important to a brand, right? So if you have a business page or a focus in these channels, then you cannot, in other words, you cannot create a strategy and have it be applicable to every channel, right? You have to look at each channel individually. So what are you going to do? What are you going to say? How are you going to do it on LinkedIn versus Twitter versus are you going to build a microsite? What about your mobile presence? How does search affect this? What about SEO? What are we going to hire influencers? What about organic and earned influencers? How are they going to, is it going to be, TikTok influencers? Cause that's a thing. And by the way, they make tons of money. Snapchat influencers make, and we're not talking like I'm not even talking like the Kim Kardashians of the world, right? Where they make, I think LeBron James charges like $400,000 for like an update on his feed on Instagram or even Twitter or something like that. One tweet, which isn't worth it, by the way. So my point is that you have to look at each channel individually. So that means you have to understand how those channels work. And we're going to go through that in this class, right? Where you need to understand the demographics of that channel so that you can ensure that the messaging and the creative align to that demographic, right? Because you cannot, in other words, you cannot have creative that's meant to target, old folks like myself and put it on TikTok. Regardless of, my appearances on TikTok, gotta say, I'm a lot younger than I am. I look younger than I am, rather. At least that's what my daughters say. But you can, in other words, you can't just have a blanket strategy, right? You have to look at each channel individually. Okay, we're going to go through that. Owned media, we're going to talk about that in a second. So timeline is, okay, what are you going to launch and when? So I like to do what I call pre, during, and post. So you have a product launch on June 1st. What are you going to do leading up to it? If you're doing some type of video ad, are you going to do short videos or vignette videos that are like, not necessarily giving away the entire campaign, but like teaser videos, right? A lot of brands do that. So what are you going to do pre-event launch or pre-event and or pre-launch? What are you going to do during? That is your blitz. That is when you turn on all the media, your paid media, your search, everything else, and then your post. How do you keep that? And in some cases, there might not be a post. It might be like a year-long campaign, which means how do you sustain momentum over the course of 6, 12, 18 months? If it's a short-term like product launch, there's going to be an end date, right? And that's literally the day after it launches. What are you going to do to sustain the conversation, to sustain sales? Any questions so far while I go on? Do I need to elaborate a little bit more? All right. A paid media plan. So I'm going to talk about what paid media is and how you define it in a second, but it's essentially how much you're going to spend in which channel and how you're going to measure it and what creative you're going to use. Okay. Now, back in the day, it was just a media plan because a lot of, depending upon the type of agency you worked at, if you're a media agency, you're building plans for TV, you're building media plan. In other words, where are you going to buy media during what shows? Are you going to buy a Super Bowl ad? Because that's going to cost you $3 million, or you're going to do, during the news or during certain shows, or what about cable advertising, on Netflix, things like that. So that is like essentially documenting how much you're going to spend in each of the channels where you plan to execute your program, and then putting, potential impressions, your click-through rate, your target creative, your target consumer. So that kind of in itself is a plan. Okay. And then lastly is just your KPIs and goals, right? What do you, now KPI is something that is a little bit more, I want to say specific, but again, it just depends upon how, your worldview and where you grew up and, where you work, right? So a lot of people might say the opposite, but again, are you planning on increasing sales by 10, 15%? Are you trying to increase share of voice? Do you want to reach certain influencers? How many influencers do you want mentioning your brand without you having to ask them stuff, right? So it's just documenting that in your strategy. Now, how many slides, anybody, question for you. Imagine doing this in PowerPoint or Google Slides. How many slides do you think total you would constitute all of what a common or just your average digital strategy? How many slides do you think that encompasses?
15 to 20.
That's a good guess. Anybody else? So I've seen a few strategies that were about 15 to 20, but there was a lot missing. I've seen strategy decks and presentations that go from anywhere from 30 to like 99 slides. So it's insane how much information that you need to put down. And again, it just depends upon who you're presenting it to and what's it for. If it's a pitch and you're just pitching a client, it's not going to be that long, right? Because sometimes when you're pitching a client, if you're in the PR, in the agency world like I am, a lot of these things are part of your pitch, but it's not, we don't call it a strategy. We call it, here's what we, here's our thoughts on a campaign execution, or it could be strategy, but it's not like a strategic plan, if you will. All right. Has anybody seen this graphic before?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Yes, no?
Yeah, I have.
You have? Okay. So this is peso. Okay. Not the currency. Okay. Hold on. Can you guys give me 1 second? My daughter's calling me. Hey, I'm in class, dude. Sorry about that. All right. So peso, paid, earned, shared, owned. Now this is also a buzzword that you need to learn and know. And maybe even when you're going through an interview process or for an internship, ask the interviewee or interviewer what their plan is from a peso standpoint, or what, how, do you guys have all channels? What's your peso model? Peso is essentially all the different media platforms. And I'm going to go through each of these quickly. So, and by the way, you need to learn this. This is going to be pretty specific and heavy in our midterm, because this is kind of the foundation of all marketing, right? Regardless of what you do, if you work in some type of marketing or comms, your role, your output, your tactic is in here somewhere. Okay. So let me talk through this. I'm going to start with paid media. Now I'm going to ask the question, without you guys all looking at the examples here, who can explain what paid media is? Anybody?
I'm assuming when like a business or brand pays someone either to make something or like, yeah, I guess it's kind of that direction.
Kind of, but you don't pay someone necessarily, right? Unless it's an paid influencer.
I'm assuming like if I were to pay or submit some money to Instagram for them to boost my posts, is it like that?
Exactly. So think about like boosting posts, things like that. What about advertising during the Super Bowl? Is that paid media?
Yeah.
100%. Anytime you pay to show up somewhere, that is paid media. So think about Google search. When you Google information, you're going to see, and I don't know if you've noticed the difference between an organic search result and a paid search result. Does anybody know the differences? Usually at the top, you have your paid search. Test it. Like test, Google something like artificial intelligence or, new laptop or something along those lines. And you're going to see, if you did like new laptop or, new touchscreen laptop, whatever, you're going to see paid ads. You're going to see HP, you're going to see Dell, you're going to see Toshiba, Lenovo, and Apple. You'll probably see Apple the most because they're probably spending the most. in the paid search results, and then you're going to see the organic search results. We're going to talk about both of those at a later time. But the paid search results is paid media. You're paying Google to show up there, and you're paying for every click. Every time somebody clicks on an ad, you could be paying Google 10 cents up to $25 per click. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of clicks per day. So when you drive up and down 101, I don't normally notice a lot of ads. I do notice the Chipotle ones for some reason. I don't even love Chipotle, but they have good ads. Up and down 101, like towards Redwood City, going 101 north. They always have ad space there. And there's one ad that, I thought I'll never forget this one ad because it really spoke to me personally. And I like to share this example because it's a headline. It's all about personal headlines. And does anybody know the company Bay Alarm? Has anybody seen them? They do like a commercial alarm system. So like a lot of these like small businesses or office parks, they have like alarm systems, and then if the alarm goes off, it contacts the alarm, and it goes to the police and all that. But they also do it for homes too. So they do also residential alarms. So think of like Ring, right? They're a less sophisticated platform than like Ring or what is Google's product. Anyway, so I was driving one day and I saw this ad, and it was basically a picture of this like a house, and the house was all lit up, but you can tell by the camera angle that it was taken pretty far back, and it was dark. It was all so imagine you're in the woods and you see a house, maybe 30, 40, 50 yards ahead, and you take a picture, right? So you can kind of paint the picture of somebody's watching the house, right? That is what I thought of when I first saw this ad. And the ad it just said this, okay? It said, not just safe, period. Ninja safe. Okay. So I get like, honestly, tingles when I think about that, because it brought me back to my childhood. Growing up, like I wanted to be a ninja. Like that was my goal. I loved all the ninja movies. I loved all the Bruce Lee movies. I tried to find like ninja stars. And when I found one, I, tried to create nunchucks and used to throw ninja stars at my wall. And I had hundreds of holes in my wall. My mom got in trouble for all that. But I was a ninja for a couple of years during Halloween. But think about it. Like if you know ninjas, what are ninjas known for?
Like stealth?
Stealth, right? Exactly. Getting in and out without being detected. So they basically are saying our alarm systems are safe, but we also protect you against ninjas, which is basically means anybody, right? So that, and those words always stuck with me because it's literally not just safe, ninja safe. 5 words that painted a complete story for me. And it hit me personally more so because of the personal connection to ninjas. But that is a powerful ad. That is probably one of the most powerful ads I've seen for me. Okay. So did I buy a Bay Alarm though? That's the next question. Do I actually purchase that product for my home? And the answer is no. I have a Ring at home. Okay. So that's the thing with paid media. The thing with paid media is anybody can buy an ad anywhere, on Google, on TV, on a billboard, in search. Even if your product sucks, you can buy an ad. And that's why paid media isn't trusted very much, right? Because anybody can buy it. There's no credibility associated with paid media. Now, the great thing is, so that's one of the kind of the negatives about paid media. Also, it's expensive. And but some of the positives is it's scalable, right? So, and predictable, right? So in other words, if you have $100,000, you can turn on ads tonight, right? And now, assuming you have creative and banner ads or whatever, you can turn on your ads on and off at your free will. So it's easy to scale up and easy to scale down. But the minute you scale down, there goes your ads, right? Nobody's going to see it anymore. Okay. So that's just some of the things that paid media encompasses. Now, who can tell me what earned media is?
It's like being on the news and stuff, right? Or like public relations.
Yep. Anybody else?
Can I take a stab at it?
Sure.
maybe it's like, for example, when you're launching a product, you organize this big event and then you invite bloggers and stuff, but you don't pay them to say anything. You just show them what they can write about if they want to. And if
That
they
is
do write about it, yeah.
that is definitely earned media. Now the textbook definition is media relations, right? It's okay, I have a product and launch, or I have an executive with a point of view. I'm going to contact a journalist at the Wall Street Journal who I have a relationship with. I'm going to pitch a story or pitch commentary from an executive, and hopefully they'll write about it, right? One thing I forgot to mention about paid media real quick is, and this is an important factor, so write this down. You have 100% complete control over everything, meaning whatever type of creative you want to put out there, whatever words, whatever language, whatever hashtags, whatever, if you want to have a man on your creative versus a woman, or a woman versus a man, or, any ethnicity, any culture, any whatever, like you have control over that 100% control. Okay. Now with earned media though, you don't, right? Because you can pitch a story to the New York Times or Glamour or, Cosmo or whatever, and just because you pitch doesn't mean that they're going to write about your story or write about your business. Okay. So there's risk there. And the risk is that you can hire an agency for $20K a month and they're going to pitch stories all day. Now, is that going to always turn into results? No. Now, if you hire a good agency and somebody who has good relationships, and by the way, 90%, well, I take that back. 50, 60% of earned media is relationships. Now, this is my opinion. Not everybody agrees. Because if you can pick up the phone and call the editor of Fast Company, wow, right? And even if he or she's not the writer for a certain beat, they'll put you in contact with that person, okay? So relationships, and then obviously, again, you have to have a good product because you cannot buy journalists, right? There's kind of the separation of church and state. You cannot buy journalists. What you can do is you can do what's called a byline or promoted post, which is basically, Forbes does this. I think most of the publications do this, where you pay $1,200 or $2,500, and you write a piece of sponsored content. It's an article, but you paid for it, right? So, and that's why when you go to some articles, it'll say this is sponsored. That just means it did not go through any type of, it might've gone through some editorial control and workflows, but for the most part, the perspective, like they didn't, like, it's not a journalist writing it. It's the CEO or somebody at the company writing the article about the product. Okay. So blogger relations, it's the same thing, right? So was that Elisa who asked the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I know your voice. That's good. So blogger relations, it's the same thing. Analyst relations, same thing. Boring. I think analyst relations is and financial news, boring. Like I don't ever want to do that. It's predictable, but it's like there's no fun in it. And people who work in like industry relations or analyst relations are very uptight. They're not fun to be around. So that's earned media, right? You have no control, but it's trusted. Meaning, if you get a nice story written about you and your company in Forbes or Fast Company or Wired or whatever, there's a couple things that are happening. People are going to read it, they're going to share it, and there's a level of credibility there. But also, earned media has in the form of like long form content, articles have a tendency of performing extremely well in Google. Meaning, if you were to Google, a product or like let's just say, what's a good example? Apple Watch review, right? You're going to see a lot of paid ads, but you might see an article from CNET where the CNET head tech editor does a review of the Apple Watch, and it's a real review. He's actually testing it, and he either likes it or he doesn't. And if he does, that's a positive thing. Plus, it's going to show up in Google for terms like that. And again, people, whether you're in the B2B or consumer, people go to search for everything. We Google everything. I don't bookmark anything. I bank at US Bank, and when I open up Google Chrome, I just literally type in US Bank and hit enter. And I click on the link, log in. When I go to Gmail, new tab, type in Gmail, it just kind of auto-populates, boom. So that is Google, right? That is our gateway into the ecosystem. Earned media is typically, take a look, like Google anything you're interested in, and what are the take a look at like the first 10, the first page. What, you'll see outside of the sponsored content and sponsored results, you'll see articles most likely. Okay, 100%. Now, if it's like 12-inch, or not 12-inch, like, 65-inch, plasma television, right? You're probably not going to see articles on the first page. You'll see a bunch of shopping ads and paid ads, right? But so play with the searches and you'll see what I mean. Now, the thing with shared media, now this is relatively a new kind of idea. And it used to be just paid, earned, and owned, right? But somebody wanted to make it sound better. So they included the S and it's shared. But it actually kind of makes sense now, because if you think about everything that you do in social media, so every branded channel you have, every company Facebook page you have, every company LinkedIn page you have, every Twitter account that you have that's branded, that is what I would call shared media. Now, the caveat being, whenever you promote content, like if you do any type of ad buying or promoting of Facebook posts or Instagram posts, that then moves in from shared media into paid media. Okay. Now with shared media, you are publishing content, organic content. We're going to talk about paid media reach and organic reach at a later time and the decline of organic reach, right? So, but that's not tonight. But shared media is what you publish on your Facebook page. Now, the problem with that is that you cannot control what people say. Like, let me give you an example. There's a company, I'm not going to mention the name. There's a company that we used to work with, and they wanted to go big with a campaign when launching their first Facebook page. And so the campaign, I don't know what it was exactly, I don't remember, but it was for small business, targeted towards small business. And they launched it and they were getting tons of engagement. But when you actually looked at the comments, people were complaining about a fee that they would charge people when transferring money. It was a financial company. And so they weren't prepared for that, right? They were prepared to like launch all these cool ads, but they weren't prepared to get involved in a space that they share, i.e. shared media, with their customers or people in general, right? Because you share that space with people. Like you can't control, I mean, you can turn off comments, not recommended. You could delete comments, not recommended at all, because people will take screenshots, you've seen them, and they'll call you out and they'll tag TechCrunch, and you'll be, this company, deleted all these comments when they blah, 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 blah. So shared media, you just have to plan for it. You have to be careful in how you go to market with campaigns, and you have to have community managers, people who are actually reading the comments and responding accordingly. Or if it's customer support focused, escalating that conversation to somebody who works in support. Okay. Any comments on shared media?
So if organic reach is decreasing, how do like these platforms grow then?
Because companies are paying. That's how they make their money. So
Okay.
Facebook, so back in the day, Facebook, so here's a great example. Back in the day, you guys are probably elementary school. I'm kidding, but Facebook used to, like, if you had 100 fans of a Facebook page, and you publish something on your Facebook page, a company page, all 100 people would see it, because as a user, you've clicked follow or like, and you are basically telling Facebook, I want to receive updates from this company, so I'm going to like it or follow it. Okay, that was back in the day. Today, you have 100 followers or fans. You publish something. Guess how many people will see it? Out of 100. So you have 100. How many people do you think will see this ad? It's not promoted. There's no paid media, just an organic post.
Maybe 5 people.
Yeah, 10% maybe.
3 to 5. Sometimes, 3 to 5%, which is perfect. Sometimes 10. It depends also on how you write content, the creative you use and things like that. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but it's about 3 to 10%, honestly. So, and that's by design, because if you think about all these small companies who are putting 50, 60, 100, $100 a month in media spend, and the fact that there are like millions of small businesses out there, you can understand why Facebook is like, I don't know what their revenue is, but it's a lot, right? That's how they make their money. So organic reach is declining. It doesn't mean it's not an effective channel though. And then the last but not least is owned media. And this is basically your .com, right? Your company website, your blogs, anything that's hosted on domain or in some type of app, that these are things that, again, you have control. Now, I'm sorry, back to shared media, you have limited control. You have limited control you have full control in what you publish, limited control in what is how people respond, but you have the opportunity to respond back, right? Because if the community is calling you out for buying raw materials from the Congo because the Congo is a war-torn country, and you respond and you come clean and say, yes, we did, but we're going to stop, right? We're kind of in this era right now where a lot of people are, whether you agree with it or not, it's just kind of the world we live in, where people boycott brands for anything. And I think boycotting a brand for, buying raw materials that people died to get to the US, I think is a worthy cause for sure. And a lot of companies were doing that. Like back in 2010, 2011, a lot of tech companies, they were buying these raw, I don't remember what the raw material was exactly, but it was something that went into the chips, right? And these activists were like literally attacking every company Facebook page. And some companies turned off comments, some companies deleted comments, and it was worse for them. And other companies said, you know what, you're right, and we're going to make a change. You have our word that by this time next year, we will not be getting our raw materials from the Congo. Okay. So that's the kind of engagement that you can potentially have in shared media, right? Customer support too, like Twitter is a great channel for customer support. So if anybody have Comcast, I love Comcast. People give me dirty looks when I say that because I have Spectrum. I live in Morgan Hill. They don't offer Comcast, and Spectrum is terrible. Terrible internet, terrible cable, terrible customer service. I miss I had Comcast for 15 years before moving here. Never had a problem. Fast internet, Anyway, so Comcast Cares, I think it's the handle. They use Twitter for customer support. A lot of companies are using, Southwest Airlines as well. All the airlines are using Twitter for customer support related engagement with customers. So back to the owned media. So again, you have complete control of what you publish. And one thing I forgot to mention, and this is where SEO comes in. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. I don't have it here listed, but it's basically search engine optimization equates to what I call the organic search results. So I'm going to show some examples of this next, I think in a couple of weeks. I don't remember which class, but and there's things that you could do. If any of you have a WordPress blog or no HTML, then you know what metadata is, right? Title tags, description tags, keyword tags. And those are it's code that tells Google what your page is about, because Google can't see and watch the videos, right? But if you, through the content, like the what you type on a page, like all the specs for your product, where your product is sold, where your product is manufactured, how much your product costs, that is all indexed in Google. Google can see all that and it start to make sense of what your page is about. Same with the metadata, right? The metadata people don't see the metadata. You do see the metadata when you do a search. So the search results in Google, the underlined blue links that you click on, that's metadata, right? That is the title tag and the description tag that show up in the search results. Those are headlines, people. Those are headlines. You need to write the title tags in your web pages in a way that when somebody sees it in the search results, there's a call to action to click on it. So I'm almost done, by the way, because I'm starving. But owned media, I want to tell you one other story. So I worked for a company, technology company, and they are literally right off 101 in like Montague, like kind of by Levi Stadium. Huge company. I'm not going to mention the name. And years ago, like 2006, I worked on this. I was doing social media, was brand new, but I was part of a team, the web marketing team. That was like the team I was part of. And there were people who they were responsible for different web pages. So if you think of like, product pages, specs, and if you have a lot of products, that's a lot of pages. So the company had over 100,000 web pages, 100,000 web pages, right? If you think about the community forum, so if you ever had to like hard reset your iPhone or some type of mobile product, you Google it, you end up in the Apple forums, right? That's owned media. And Apple forums, every thread is a web page. So, and what I love about Apple Forms is I'm not just, kind of a Mac. I mean, I buy everything Apple just because it just works. But you go in there and other people are responding. So there are no Apple employees who are part of that community. Well, there might be a few, but they always self-identify as being a product manager or somebody who works there. But every time somebody answers your question, like, how do I connect to Wi-Fi through, a router bought in Hawaii? I don't know. And the people responding are other Apple enthusiasts. So that's also considered owned media. It's a web page. And can you take a wild guess? Now, this is a Fortune 100 company. I'm just going to throw this out there. How many employees do you think were responsible for managing the company website or different pieces of the company website? Okay. So think of the design element, right? How it's going to look, the writing, what it's going to say by certain descriptions and products, the back end IT piece of if there's a e-commerce piece of it, you need to connect a database, right? And connect to different, if you're accepting or you're selling products directly online, there's, you need to connect to some type of, I can't remember the name of it, but like, so that you can collect money, right? And, not PayPal, but things like that. And well, some smaller companies use PayPal for this, but how many total, like full-time employees do you think worked on this company website? Anybody?
50?
25?
25, anybody else?
40.
10,
10.
maybe?
A lot of, okay. You're going to be blown away. 150 people. And these people, some of these people made anywhere between $80,000 a year to $200,000 a year. And they were responsible for managing web pages, right? But that meant working with an agency for the creative, working with an agency for the content and the words, working with IT to make a page go live, right? So all the back end pieces of it. And so it's not a small endeavor, right? It's a huge endeavor to manage owned media. There's so many things. And if you work on the PR side, you're probably going to be focused more on like blogs and or newsrooms. A newsroom is basically a place where, PR people put new press releases, which is not a good strategy, by the way. You have to a good newsroom is meant to tell stories and provide commentary on things, not a press release. There's no value in that whatsoever. Okay. In fact, a lot of companies here in Silicon Valley are moving away from press releases and just writing blog posts instead. It's a little bit more human, right? I have a hard time reading a press release because the format is just weird. I can read a blog post though all day. Okay. So let me just stop sharing. Okay. All right. Can you guys see me? All right. So that's peso, right? Peso is paid, earned, shared, owned. Another way to say this is that it's integrated marketing. It's thinking about the collective picture of reaching audiences. And I want you to remember this data point. It takes 3 to 5 touch points for a consumer to believe your message. Okay, so in other words, they need to see it in an ad. They need to hear it from somebody else. They need to read about it in the newspaper or see it in their feed 3 to 5 times before they actually start to believe what your message is. And the fact that we live in a very busy world, it's almost impossible to do that, which is why peso is important, right? It's surround sounding your customers with consistent, relevant storytelling. And one thing I talked a lot in the first week about building habits, right? And repetition. So as you start writing every week on LinkedIn, it's going to become a habit. It's the same thing with messaging and storytelling. You publish, that's why we all know Prudential. And the I can sing the song right now if you want. Or what are some other things that that are just like, what's the one mattress?
Geico.
Geico, yeah, but what is there like Geico? Do you have the cavemen and the gecko? But what's is there a song or a statement like I was thinking of
Jake
like
from State
Cars for
Farm.
kids.
1-800 cars for kids. So so little things like that, because we hear them all the time, they become second nature, right? So nationwide, I mean that there's a mattress one that my daughter sings all the time. It's hilarious. Anyway, that's the point. They do that on purpose because they are surround sounding you with radio ads, television ads, social media ads. And what's interesting about that is sometimes I will literally talk about something in one room, go to Google, and I know for a fact I've never Googled it, but I start to Google it and it just shows up in the drop down, and or I scroll through Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, and all of a sudden I see an ad based on the conversation I had, which is freaky scary because I know for a fact that my phone listens to me and gives that data to advertisers. They have to, which by the way, I'm completely fine with 100%. Because I don't want to see ads about Pampers. You hear that? Siri, I don't want to see ads of Pampers. No, I want to see ads with things that I care about. Sports, sneakers, shoes, technology. I love technology. So that's my feed. My Instagram feed is filled with ads, and they're all relevant. And I buy a lot. So I'd rather have relevant ads than irrelevant ads to me, just because it interests me better or more. So that concludes today's session. Again, very high level, right? What are the elements of a digital marketing plan? And it really is built on this infrastructure called PESO, paid, earned, shared, and owned. And I'm going to make this video available. So one of the homework assignments was to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I feel weird saying that. Hey guys, like, subscribe, my YouTube channel. It sounds like those young beauty bloggers, right? They all say that. But seriously though, subscribe and click on notifications though, because what I'm going to do is every session, I'm recording this one, and I'll stop now.